For more than a century, it has been a political fact of life here in Georgia. The winner of the Democratic primary becomes governor. If history repeats itself, when Campaign 90 ends, the next governor of Georgia will be one of the 5 men with us tonight.
It's the hottest race for governor in years. 5 Democrats want the job and the chance to live in this elegant mansion as the state's highest elected official.
Good to see y'all. Thanks. Hey, folks.
He's respected as the governor's floor leader in the state Senate. Now he's making his first run for statewide office.
I'm Roy Barnes, and the most important issue in this race is the protection of the environment. All right, how you doing? Okay, very good.
He's been a congressman, an ambassador, and Atlanta's mayor. He's the first high-profile black candidate ever to run for governor.
I'm Andy Young, and the most important issue facing Georgia is education and economic development. And it's a two-edged sword. The two have to go together.
Good to see you this morning. Thank you. Thank you. Good to be.
His nickname is Bubba, a politician who owns a hardware store, who says state government should be run as well as a business.
I'm Lauren McDonald, and as I've traveled this state and listened to Georgians, the most important issue on their minds is crime. Hi,
Yes, Bill Miller. Good to see you, Troy.
He's been Georgia's lieutenant governor for more than 15 years, a man who's proud of his mountain heritage.
I'm Zell Miller. The most important issue facing Georgia is improving our educational system.
Don't y'all dare let nobody else have that vote.
25 years ago, he was a symbol of segregation. He became governor in the turbulent 60s. Now, he wants the job again.
This is Lester Maddox, candidate for governor. I want to be your next governor to give you something you're missing. I want you to have open, honest, efficient government.
Barnes, Young, McDonald, Miller, Maddox. Tonight, a Channel 5 Eyewitness News special, Campaign 90, the Democrats. Here's John Marler.
Good evening, welcome to Campaign 90, the Democrats. Our format and rules are simple. In the first half hour, 5 issues will be explored. In the second, I'll moderate a discussion, and hopefully the candidates will question each other and respond to each other. Now, part 1. On these cards, which I have shuffled, are the names of each candidate. As each issue is raised, I will select a card. That candidate will respond first to my question. His time limited to no more than a minute and a half. Then the 4 remaining candidates will have a combined 3 minutes to rebut or otherwise respond. The candidates understand our time is limited. That means I may be forced to say time's up, not to be rude, gentlemen, but just to keep the format moving. So let's begin with our first issue, crime. In the 7-county metro area, police report more murders, more rapes, more crime than ever in nearly every category. In the past 8 years, violent crime in metro Atlanta has gone up more than 64%. In that same time, property crimes have increased more than 59%. Much of Atlanta's crime, especially its violent crime, is drug-related. And Georgia is running out of places to put convicted criminals. Overcrowding has forced the state to adopt an early release program, and taxpayers are now spending millions to build new prisons. And the first person to respond to our question, picked at random, Zell Miller. And the question is, with what we've just heard about crime, the statistics, is it time for the state to do something drastic? Is it time for the state to bring the National Guard in to handle drugs, to sanction a separate police department for housing projects? Is it time for the state to move in and take action?
Well, I have a 4-point program that deals with drugs, and of course drugs is the main reason for crime in this state. About 4 out of 5 of the people who are arrested and go to prison are there because of some drug-related crime. And what I've talked about doing is having boot camps for first-time nonviolent drug offenders. Second thing I'd do is I'd have drug treatment programs in all of our regional state hospitals. Third thing I think we ought to do is we ought to have drug education in every grade, in every school in this state. That would cost a lot of money, and I'd pay for it with part of the proceeds from a lottery. And the fourth thing we've got to do is to make these law enforcement officers across this state know that the state is backing them to the hilt I'd make sure that they had whatever tools, whatever arsenal they needed to enforce all the drug laws all the time in this state. Zell Miller would be very tough on crime. He would be very tough on drugs. I'd call this Operation Drug Stop, and I'd hire me a tough, hard-nosed administrator working directly out of a governor's office, not buried over in human resources or corrections, to administer it. And we'd send a message that there's not going to be any free ride for first-time offenders. There's not going to be any mercy for drug pushers or drug manufacturers.
Response now. We'll start with Andrew Young.
Yeah, I think that what we've got to do is understand that crime is also related to education. And we are the third highest dropout rate in the country. And those dropouts are the people that most likely end up in prison, most likely end up selling drugs. I think we've got to start with the education system, and we've got to train our young people for the future. I also have had the experience in dealing with the crime situation in Atlanta, where we found ourselves chasing crime around. We've got to have a coordinated effort between the State Patrol, the GBI, the large city police forces, and the small town police forces. And we've got to have a strategy for making Georgia very uncomfortable for the drug dealers. I would bring the National Guard in, and I've talked to the National Guard about a possible role.
I think that the policy of this state ought to be in regard to crime. The first is to convict the defendants, which we're doing a pretty good job of. The second is to take the property away from the drug sellers, particularly forfeit their property, whether it's a lake lot, an airplane, a boat, an automobile, or whatever they've gotten because of their illegal activities. And the third thing, we have to have some bed space. And the most efficient way to do that is to reopen the public work camps that we closed between 1970 and 1981, when 30 public work camps were closed. And we can build those beds for $5,000 a bed. We need to put prisoners back to work, and we need to make sure that that's part of the punishment.
Lester Maddox.
I would say the state's already in the business of enforcing the laws, but the state's failing. Under the Maddox administration, we had law and order where it was broken down all over the United States. The mayor here, he's presided over Crime City, USA, and it's spreading all over. So there's got to be a change. There's got to be someone with a past record as a chief executive can enforce the law, and that's the people to stand by it and protect it. We're not doing that now. The people not secure in their homes and not safe on the streets, they need someone that can do the job, not a politician.
Lauren McDonald.
Well, the first order of business of our Constitution requires us to protect persons and property. And I've said crime is the issue in this campaign. And what we've got to do, and what I would do as governor of Georgia, the first order of business is to stop the early release program. We've got to change attitudes of the criminal. When they know that they're going into a system and they're going to be in a revolving door, that's not going to help. Rehabilitation doesn't work. Boot camps may be fine, but what we're doing with that, we're just going to beef up people to go back and beat up on our law enforcement officers at a particular period of time. I think we've got to change attitudes, and to do that, we got to put people away.
We move now to our second issue, and that is the environment. The state of Georgia ranks 8th in the nation for air, water, and ground pollution. The Environmental Protection Agency classifies Atlanta's air quality as serious, one of 90 American cities in that category. Metro Atlanta's rivers and lakes are filthy, polluted with toxic chemicals, partially treated sewage, and industrial byproducts. This year, Georgia adopted the weakest standard in the nation for dioxin, a chemical linked to cancer. Georgia industries generate tons of hazardous waste, yet so far there is no agreement on where to put it. And picked at random to begin the answer to the second question, Andrew Young. Is it time for the state to have a very serious environmental prosecution effort, perhaps a department that is dedicated to cleaning up the environment with teeth in it?
Well, I've proposed separating the environmental protection function out of the Department of Natural Resources and encouraging it to work directly with the Office of the Governor. I also think we need to take the responsibility in the state to fund the Environmental Facilities Act, and I would like to pull together an advisory committee of environmentalists, government, and business to see if we can't have a watchdog on the environment. I have been working on the environment now for 20 years, since Congress, when I passed a bill to make the Chattahoochee River a national recreation area. And we spent over $300 million improving the water and sewer system in the city of Atlanta, and also put a ban on the toxic, the phosphates that are in our detergents, so that that was what was killing our lakes downstream. We can monitor the environment, and we can protect the air and the water and the earth that the Lord gave us.
Mr. Burns.
The protection of the environment is the most important issue in this campaign. Over the last few years, I have been the author of the most important and far-reaching environmental legislation in this state, including last session of the General Assembly, the Clean Lakes Program, which is being touted as the best in the nation. I think that we have to have an aggressive effort to enforce our environmental laws. I've lost some battles on trying to strengthen them. For example, the soil and sedimentation exemption from the State Highway Department that Zell was opposed to 2 years ago, and it finally got taken out. And I think that my record on the environment is shown by the fact that the Sierra Club, the largest environmental group in this state, has endorsed my candidacy.
Mr. Maddox, you agree?
I say that what we're doing in the environment is we're 10, 15 years late. The environmentalists are way ahead of the politicians, but they got them running now. I flew over the Chattahoochee River several times today. That's ugly, nasty, dirty thing, and the people guilty of messing that up to that condition, it ought to be a criminal offense against the city, the county, or the private sector. And so I would say that under the Maddox administration, Lester Maddox being, I try to drink clean, live clean, talk clean, dress clean as I can, and I don't like these guys messing up my environment, so there'll be no sacred cows, and whoever is guilty is going to pay the penalty for it. We can't let our environment have irreparable harm done to it as we're doing it this time. It's got to be stopped.
The environment, Mr. McDonald.
During the 1990 legislative session, I co-authored a resolution for a study committee to see if we need to separate DNR and the Department of Environmental Protection Agency. This is not to create a new bureaucracy in state government, but to see if there needs to be a true separation of those agencies. Also, we funded 27 new positions for enforcement officers in DNR. This has enabled them to enforce the present laws that we have on Georgia. And we've got some strong laws. We've made a lot of progress with our water over the last 15 years. We've still got a long ways to go. One of the other ways that could help here is the redefine of the Developmental Highway Program to include rapid rail into that program, because in order for the air in Atlanta, we've got to move to rail.
My record on the environment is a long and consistent one. As a young state senator back in the early 1960s, before anybody had ever heard the word, I was introducing legislation on water quality and setting aside wilderness areas. We've got some severe problems in this state. 40 million tons of hazardous waste are produced each year, 10th in the nation. I'd make those who pollute pay to clean it up. We're a throwaway society, and we're running out of places to throw it. We'd fill up Fulton County Stadium every 2 weeks with our solid waste. What I'd want to do is to reduce solid waste in this state by a third through recycling and composting, and I'd also want to have environmental courses in public schools and in college.
We move ahead now. Our third issue, health care. An insurance company study shows Georgia ranks 46th in life expectancy and 35th in good health habits. Many Georgians, especially people who live in rural parts of the state, find it difficult or impossible to see a doctor. Among patients in Georgia's 350 nursing homes, the federal government estimates 1 out of 4 does not get adequate professional nursing care. Georgia is also providing care to more and more AIDS patients. 3,000 cases of AIDS were reported in Georgia between 1981 and 1989. The past few years have shown an increase in the number of women and children contracting the disease. And Roy Barnes selected to begin the answer to this question. Is the state in a position to ensure to the citizens of Georgia quality, timely medical care?
Well, I will tell you that we're not doing a very good job about it right now. We have several crises in regard to health care. One of them is in Medicaid, which is the process by which Georgia ensures its indigents, make sure there's availability of health care. And the greatest problem that we have in Medicaid is that between 30 and 40% of all the Medicaid budget goes to nursing homes. You will never be able to provide quality health care to those who are poor until you get the nursing home cost under control. And that is a political problem that has long beset this state. That is, the nursing home industry picks them out a candidate, contributes heavily to it so they don't get touched during a process of reform in the next session of the General Assembly. The other thing that we have to do is we have to pick up our prevention efforts. We have to make sure that we undertake in providing prenatal care, for example, almost on a mobile basis, if we have to, throughout the state. The third thing we have to do in that regard is to make sure that general practitioners stay in rural areas delivering children. I've proposed a plan that is very similar to that of North Carolina, where you supplement the malpractice premiums so that those physicians continue to birth children in rural areas.
Our opportunities to respond now, Mr. Maddox.
I think, you know, oftentimes we're going to have to develop the regional institutions or health facilities to take care of the ones who cannot provide for themselves from the rural areas, from the rural cities. We can do that with some tax incentives to get and loans to the doctors, loans to the students to get them out into those areas. And then I think mismanagement of fiscal affairs in state government may be one of the great weak points that we have today, and it causes us to do a lot more for the have-nots who will not, and we're not able to do as much as for the have-nots who cannot. And so we're neglecting in the nursing homes. We're paying more people get more money to change diapers, or less money to change diapers in a nursing home than they do turn hamburgers in McDonald's.
Health care is the hidden agenda for the 90s, not only for Georgia, but for the nation. Things that we have done in Georgia is your response to the rural area. Number one, we've developed partnerships with Mercer Medical College and Morehouse College, Medical College, in order to put doctors back into rural areas. We have a family practice program at Medical College of Georgia. We have funded the midwifery program, whereby it's given prenatal care, and it's been on a continuing basis and a growing basis. One of the areas that we can access care to those individuals is through our health district offices, and this is something that the state government can do in the future to reinforce our district health offices to provide that medical attention.
We move along, Mr. Miller.
There's no quick fix. People are living longer, and it costs about 3 times longer to take care of someone over 65 than it does those under. But prevention is the key. For example, it costs from birth to death to look after a mentally retarded person $1 million. And yet we know that by good prenatal care, we can keep half the mental retardation births from occurring that occur. Also, medical science is inventing faster than public policy can afford, and some medical cost containment is going to be necessary. For example, a lot of people are sent to hospitals when they probably could have that diagnostic work done at a lower cost as an outpatient.
I'm sorry. Mr. Young, we'll ask you to sum it up for us.
Yeah, we've got about 43 hospitals around Georgia that are already running in the red. Grady, the Medical College of Georgia, have enormous expenses. We're going to have to find some way to have some sort of pool insurance. We're going to have some way for the state to help fund those hospitals that are running into difficulty. You can't bring business and educate children if you don't have good health care. I come out of a health care family. My daddy had a trailer riding around fixing people's teeth, sponsored by the state. Public health is something we can't overlook.
You said the word educate. Let's move on now to our next topic, education. The dropout rate is dismal. 39% of the state students drop out before completing high school. Last year, the state authorized a $20 million study to help identify students most likely to drop out. Test scores do show improvement. Middle and high school students are doing better on basic skills tests. But on the Scholastic Aptitude Test, the SAT, Georgia students score well below the national average in both reading and math. Georgia's teacher salaries are also well below the national average, prompting protest and demands for more money. The issue and the question go to Lester Maddox. What parents around the state are talking about, how do you keep the really good teachers that are in there, and how do you get a lot more of them to make sure the kids in the state are getting the best?
Well, back in the previous administration, Lester Maddox administration, rather than a shortage, we had a surplus of teachers.
But how do you keep
We
them
were
now?
competitive. You have to be competitive. Then you have to go back into the early years and children going to school to lead them in that direction. We're not doing that now. We're failing. We lead them in the effort toward behavior, toward academic programs, selling them on the idea that if they excel in school, they're going to move into the graduation at the end of 11 years, not 12. And there'll be more of them going up. The SAT average will be going up. There'll be more of them in college. There'll be more of them in high tech. There'll be less of them going to crime, less of them dropouts, less of them on drugs. And we can raise up the level to a much higher extent we have today. And the young people need that challenge. Right now, if they get graduated 12 years. If they're failures, they get same recognition with a diploma almost they do if they excel. We want to teach people if they excel, they're going to be rewarded or get an award for going up. And we're not doing that today. We're failing. If we don't start a prevention program, the crime problem in the prisons, wherever we're going to have more and more trouble.
Mr. McDonald.
Keep teachers and attract teachers. Is that the question?
That's the question.
Okay, to keep teachers, you've got to do initiatives like I did in this last legislative session. Weighting the salary increase toward veteran teachers. You know, once a teacher reaches the 17th year, there's no increase for them except through the cost of living adjustment. Through the appropriations process, I weighted that toward the veteran teachers. This gives that beginning teacher an opportunity to see that they can have a career in teaching, that they don't lose comparison with the private sector 10, 15, 20 years into the program. The second way, of course, is to freeing teachers to do what they are professionally trained to do, and that's teach children, not having to do all the other busy work that's now being employed in the classroom.
We move to your right, Mr. Miller.
We don't think a thing about paying a brain surgeon $200,000 a year, and yet we know that a bad teacher can screw up more brains in a day than a brain surgeon can. We've got to pay them more, and the way you do that is you pay the good teachers. You're never going to have enough money to pay the good teachers what they deserve as long as you insist on paying all the other teachers, the mediocre ones and the incompetent ones, the same thing. Also, that's the reason that I'm for a lottery, because I want to have some of that lottery money to pay math and science teachers more, give them cash bonuses. Those are the ones that we're losing to private enterprise.
We move to Mr. Young.
I think we've got to make a state commitment that we're going to spend 55% of our state budget on education. And then if we have a lottery, which probably won't happen for 3 or 4 years, then we make those supplemental funds. But I think what we do is we've got to put the support into education from the government, from business. We've got to attract young people, as Georgia Southern is doing, giving them 4 years of college in exchange for 4 years teaching back home, or what Augusta College is doing in recruiting people from the military and urging them to take education as a second career. But these guys have been responsible for education in our state now for 16 years. And I think that the record that you're looking at is...
We move along. You're one of these guys. Your response.
I think that we have to address the most critical problem in Georgia in education, and that's our dropouts. I would implement a program that I call Learn Fair, and that's basically this. The child can't drop out at age 16 as they can now. They have to stay in school till they're age 18 or attend a vocational school. They can go to vocational school. If they do not attend, they do not be able to, they lose their right and cannot drive an automobile and get a driver's license. Secondly, they do not qualify for welfare, and they cannot be counted for welfare payments and their parents if they drop out of school.
Okay, we move along now to our fifth and final issue, structured issue, and that is the economy. Metro Atlanta continues to be one of the country's prime locations for business. But Georgia State University's most recent economic forecast shows Atlanta's economy slowing down. There is good news, though. Underground Atlanta, now just 1 year old, is booming, attracting both tourists and local residents. And the 1996 Summer Olympics, if the games come to Georgia, could bring 300,000 visitors and pump $4 billion into the state's economy. The good news is balanced by this hard fact. In February, General Motors closed its Doraville plant, laying off 1,900 workers indefinitely. Some experts say the state may soon have to deal with an unpleasant choice in the slowing economy: cut the budget or raise taxes. And first to answer, Lorna McDonald, the Governor Harris, has ordered a state spending freeze. We're in trouble. I don't know if you want to call it a crisis or not. Will you raise taxes?
No, we won't have to raise taxes. You know, Georgia has prepared itself for these types of conditions with the Revenue Shortfall Reserve Program that was put into place in the late 70s after the oil embargo. We had this same thing happen to us in 1983 when Governor Harris was elected governor. He was left with a shortfall reserve program funding of less than $500,000, when now we have $196 million in that shortfall reserve. I think Governor Harris is doing one thing very wise. I think he's, number one, saying, let's wait and see. Let's see what the economy is going to do. Sales tax grew for the first time this year in the month of May in real growth. So I think we can see a turnaround in this, but it's wise to go ahead and say, let's wait and see.
Mr. Miller.
No, we don't need new taxes. We need new ideas. We need new solutions to these old problems. That's why I've talked about a Grace Commission to look at waste and inefficiency in government. If you were to find just 2%, that would be $150 million new dollars, and I think there's more than that in the budget. We haven't had a commission like that since the Bowden Commission under Carl Sanders' administration. Also, that's why I'm talking about a lottery. $250 million new dollars to pump into education for new and creative programs. A lottery is a whole lot better than a tax increase.
Mr. Young.
Well, let me say I started with underground and I'm ending up with the Olympics. But what that means is leadership in economic development. I think we've got to continue doing what we've been doing in Atlanta all over the state. That is, bringing in good business, helping the business you've got to grow. We can double Georgia's exports. We can see to it that this economy is able to continue the boom. But it's going to take some aggressive leadership, and it's going to take someone with the kind of experience and knowledge about the world money markets that I've been blessed to have as a result of the people of Georgia electing me to things.
And we move to Mr. Burns.
Let me tell you a truism in government. It'll spend every penny you send to it. And the key to making sure that we stay on a strong and a solid fiscal basis is establishing priorities. We can't build dome stadiums at $210 million. We can't pay Zell a $100,000 a year pension. We can't have runaway spending and being able to keep on a strong financial and fiscal basis.
Mr. Maddox, we'll ask you to have the final word on
Well,
this.
you know, I was governor at one time. They said maybe if the world was going to come to an end, but our dollars for new and expanded industry in Georgia was number 7 of 7 southeastern states for dollars for new and expanded industry. 4 years later, dollars for new expanded industry had reached the previous 20 years combined. We set all kind of records. We've got to sell Georgia agricultural products, industrial products, and then we've got to be efficient in government. Lieutenant Governor Miller, in his 87 session, 88 budget, he sent an appropriations measure back that wanted to get $13 million and willing to pay $77 million new dollars in interest just to pick up $13 million. There's no fiscal strong management in his department, in the House, or in the governor's office.
We've got to wrap up, but I want to pose the question one more time. I'd like to ask you for a yes or no answer. As governor, would you raise taxes? Mr. Young?
I certainly would not.
Mr. Barnes?
No.
Mr. Maddox?
No.
Mr. McDonald?
Nope.
Okay. That concludes the first half of our candidates forum. We will be right back for an open discussion with the Democrats who want to be governor. We'd like to welcome you back to the second part of our forum. This is the open forum part of our discussion. I'll moderate, I'll referee when necessary. Gentlemen, you're welcome to ask each other questions, respond to each other. Our time will be limited, so if I have to cut you off, I'll try and be nice about it, move it around. I want to raise one issue before we start. To a lot of voters in the state, abortion is a very important issue. You can get abortions in the second trimester in Georgia. If you have the money and can get to the clinic, you can get an abortion to facilitate sex selection. Is there anyone here who, as governor, would want to place some restrictions on abortions in the state?
I'd place some restrictions on abortion. I recognize there's a broad area of discretion between a woman and a physician regarding abortion. But if Roe were overruled, I would be in favor of sex selection abortions, as you said, or late terms or abortions of convenience.
I think the Georgia law is good as it is, and I think you've got to trust the women of Georgia to make their own decisions about childbirth.
I've stated over and over myself that being a member of the legislature and helping do write the Georgia law as far as a legislator is concerned, that it's an adequate law, and I think the decision has got to be with the woman.
I'm pro-life, and I believe everybody on this panel is pro-life. If there's anyone in here wish they had been aborted, they ought to say so. And I'm going to continue to. I see it as a law to license murder, most of it, across the country. I think there are instances when they should be, maybe because of incest, rape, or the health of the mother. But I think we're morally, we've hit in the bottom.
It's all right to murder if it's incest?
Huh?
I mean, you can't say that it's all right to murder and then say it's murder and then say it's all right to murder in cases of rape and incest.
Oh, I can. I just said it.
All right.
You're mistaken,
Okay.
see?
At this point, this is the opportunity to find out what I think everyone in our audience wants to find out, and that is what makes these 5 Democrats different, and what makes one of you, in your mind, more qualified or the better candidate to be governor. Let's go at it, gentlemen.
All right. I got a question of Zell. Zell, during
Surprise.
Surprise.
You've been reading that poll.
No, I've just been missing you at most of the debates and forums. Zell, during this campaign, you and I have had a dispute over your pension and the pension amounts. You say it'd be $72,000 if you serve one term as governor. I say that it could go as high as $110,000. How do you justify the fact that it may be even $72,000 when a school teacher working over 30 years receives on the average of only $13,800?
Roy, for 16 years, you and I have worked together in that Senate. You add up those 40 days, that's 640 days in that little chamber. We've worked on legislation together. We've had meals together. My son has worked in your law firm. And so why all of a sudden now are you focusing on me as what's wrong with everything in state government? There's only one reason that you are: desperation. You're almost $1 million in debt. You're low in the polls. And I know that feeling of desperation. When I was running for the Senate in 1980,
I went to answer about the pension. Nobody cares about your life's history and all the positions you've had. Just tell me this.
Roy,
do you think it's right for a school teacher teaching 30 years to get $13,800 in a pension and you to get $72,000 to $110,000? That's all you want to know. Yes or no?
We're going to need to move this along, or we'll be doing this all night, gentlemen.
Take it easy, and when we get through with this program, I'm going to buy you a couple of chili dogs at the varsity. Now, you know that my retirement is not excessive.
Somebody has to get in.
I'm not ashamed of the retirement benefits that I receive.
Okay, hold on.
But I think I have a right to an answer. Do you say it's right that you receive $72,000 to $100,000 in a pension, and a teacher teaching 30 years?
I think we know the question.
Just answer
Well,
yes
of course
or no.
that's not right.
Well, so you're not going to draw a pension of $72,000?
No, I don't plan to
let's
draw a
move
pension
on.
of $72,000, and your figures are wrong.
You claim.
Okay, gentlemen,
I'm
imposing myself as the moderator now. Gentlemen, with all due respect. Please, Mr. McDonald.
Roy, you're making the question, but you know a pension is based on the salary. And you sponsored the governor's salary to $57,000 as the governor's floor leader in the Senate.
No, I
and
did
it's a matter of record in the Journal of the Senate.
Yeah. Zell, I mean, Bubba, whatever.
I'm
your
Zell.
name. Hey, I understand. Now, you want to answer the question now?
Well, Bubba is telling you
Well, how about
exactly
somebody
right.
else
You
wait a minute,
sponsored, you
us
sponsored
finish.
the
Well,
legislation that raised my
all of them are
salary.
candidates
You
for
bought,
governor, and you're
you
not gonna
voted
take
for the
whole
two.
show. I'll
Gentlemen,
disrupt it.
gentlemen, we're going to move along.
You're telling the people of Georgia that it's all right for a part-time politician to receive a pension of up to $100,000, but a school teacher teaching 30 to 34 years, it's not all right.
It's time to get on
That's the
somebody else.
priorities that you're
One more
you
time,
voted
gentlemen.
for the
I'm going to
legislation
impose
that
myself
gives me
as
that.
moderator.
No, I never
Mr. Miller,
voted for the pension.
Mr. Barnes, we're going to move to another topic. Mr. Maddox.
I want to finish this one up on this.
Do
one.
it quickly,
All
sir.
right,
We've
I'm
got
gonna do it real
limited
quick. They
time.
ought to not be arguing about retirement. They both stooped unethically, corruptly, to the point of using the state government and they're in office of influence as lieutenant governor and senator to get a state bank charter. And he got a radio broadcasting license. They ought not to be running for governor. People who unethically and because of their ethical misbehavior do that. That's government up for and by politicians. That's corruption in government. And the retirement order, they won't need no retirement with their banks.
Let me just
that they
say,
got because they got elected.
okay, let me just say now to try to keep this moving, if we're going to cover any ground, we've got to be a little bit quicker about getting through these things. Question, Mr. Young?
Yeah, I heard a statement by the State Patrol that they came to the legislature last year for an increase to give 16 hours of training in drug and drug-related crime. Right now, they're getting 4 hours in the State Patrol Academy, and they said they were turned down by the legislature. And I'm wondering how we can all be so tough on crime if we can't find the funding to give our state troopers more than 4 hours training.
Well, we give state troopers in the priority of the budget, Mayor. There were several things. Personnel was one of the things. They needed new positions. There have not been many new positions authorized as the Georgia population has grown with state troopers. So we have been granting those new positions. We've also, in their priority, we're needing these mobile units that they put on themselves, and we have finished that program, the new weapons that have been authorized. So there has been a very constructive program within the limitations of the dollars that we have. You can't do 55% for education and then turn right around and say you need more for public service.
While we're talking about education, I want to ask about the lottery, and I'd like to do another quick let's go around so our viewers understand where you stand. Personally, do you support or oppose a state lottery? Mr. Miller?
I'm for a state lottery. I'm tired of seeing that money going to
Mr.
Florida.
McDonald?
I voted to let the people of Georgia make a decision on
Personally,
that.
are you for or against?
I'm personally opposed to it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Maddox?
Same here, but if we get it and win the $100 million a year he's talking about, we're going to have $300 million worth of misery. They ought to have a
I'm
right
asking
to vote
for
on
yes or no on this one. If you want to take it up again, you can.
I'm
Mr. Miller.
personally opposed to it.
And Mr.
I'm
Young?
personally opposed, but I fight for the right of citizens to decide on lottery and on parimutuel betting.
Okay. Is it time for the citizens of the state to take a stronger role to say maybe the people under the gold dome just haven't been doing the job well
Well,
enough?
I think that's the demand of the people. I hear that lottery question everywhere I go. And I think you're going to have to let the people decide on a lottery, and hopefully they will not have to use that to fund education.
I'd say the state has failed, like the city of Atlanta has failed, to take care of the crime and drug problems. It's miserable. That's crime capital USA, and that man's been in charge of it.
That's right.
He's
I've
so
been in
sure,
charge of
he
it.
knows so much about crime that our city became #1, and he
yeah.
ran all over the world to stay away from Atlanta.
No, I ran all over the world trying to bring jobs to Atlanta.
Oh, you brought
and
in
did it.
Ortega.
No, yeah,
and you brought in
Ortega
the street
came.
people. You brought in the crime. You had.
Well, let
you're
me
not even
ask
running
you-
for the United States, much less
No.
Georgia.
Let me say that for 4 years in a row, 600 business executives all over America.
That's because I-
Wait a minute, no, voted Atlanta the best place in America to start a business or expand a business. 4 years in a row under my term as mayor. So people must not think Atlanta's so bad.
Well, you know what made the city grow? Like I delayed MARTA for a year because a lot of you folks wanted to put the MARTA on the ad valorem tax.
That was a wise
and it would have put
decision of yours,
$1.7
yes.
billion on
You
the ad
have-
valorem
you
tax, and
have
I
been-
stopped it. That's why the city's been growing.
You have been a great ambassador for the city of Atlanta, but also you have had a tremendous base to work with the fiscal discipline of the state of Georgia.
I agree.
The state of Georgia has maintained a strong, very pro-business attitude, and it sure has been of great help to the infrastructure of the city of Atlanta, our capital city, with the wisdom in the early 70s for the World Congress Center, with the Atlanta Zoo, that the state of Georgia has been a tremendous partner with with the city, with our capital city.
Very good.
I think back to the lottery and back to the people voting. 3 times since 1975, I've either authored or co-authored what's called public initiative, where folks can vote on a variety of issues. Dome stadiums, tax increases, even Zell's pension over there if they want to, or anything else. I was for public initiative even when Zell was against the lottery. And I think that we ought to put public initiative in. But to say that the lottery is going to solve Georgia's education problems is wrong. Betty Castor in the state of Florida, who's commissioner of the state of Florida, says lottery is the worst thing that has ever happened to education in Florida.
I don't think it's going to solve all the problems, but you can't tell me that $250 million new dollars can't be used in our educational system when we're spending $900 less per pupil than the national average. And Roy, you're not telling all the facts. Back in January of 1979, January the 18th to be exact, on a public initiative bill, you voted to exclude the lottery on public initiative.
The one I introduced.
Now just tell the whole story. Tell the whole story.
The one I introduced had any issue in it. In 1979, because you weren't helping to get things passed in the General Assembly, and particularly through the Senate, I would have taken any vote on public initiative. And we fought this issue many times over, and you have generally been standing in the wings.
Roy, excuse me now while you're interrupting me, for me speaking while you're interrupting. But the fact of the matter is, when the vote on the lottery to give it the people the right to vote in Georgia came up, you made a 19-minute speech on it. You had your television crews there filming it because you planned to work on it in this campaign. You found out as you went around this state that the people want to vote on the lottery.
Now, wait,
Mr. McDonald.
since it's addressed to
We have 5 candidates.
I voted in the industry committee to let the people of Georgia make a decision on the lottery. But I don't know where you're getting the $250 million. When I listen to testimony in that committee from lottery officials, they don't say that Georgia's going to have a $250 million lottery in 3 to 4 years.
No, they do, Bubba. They say that we're going to have a minimum of $250 million. You've got to take in consideration that 45 million people go through that Hartsfield Airport a year. That's where our biggest sale would be.
He's already promised $4 billion of that $200 million he's talking about.
No, Governor.
I mean, they don't have any sense of reason.
Calm down.
Calm down. I'm not going to calm down. I mean, fiscal mismanagement is why they had to cut back and freeze employment today. I told you, I told us governor, I told everybody in General Assembly last year they'd overestimated revenue, and there's going to be a $133 million minimum shortage. It could be $200 million, and now y'all admitting it. Y'all don't really know what's going on over there.
Gentlemen, around this table, we have a consensus that any one of you as governor will not raise taxes. We have a great argument here about the lottery, whether there'll be one, and how much money it will raise. So what are we going to do to fund the state? Where's the money going to come from?
Well, I thought $1,039 million they've thrown away in interest and didn't even have to borrow the money. We can't ever finance education, QBE. We can't clean up the environment. They don't know what to do with tax money. They know what to do with their money, but they are lost when it gets to tax money. There's nobody keeping the store in state government.
The money comes from prioritizing the spending, saying no to projects that are boondoggle, pork barrel, and that we should not be into. It's a question of how we manage it. Just 2 years ago, both Zell and Bubba were the authors of the largest tax increase in Georgia's history. We did not go through a process of becoming lean in state government.
Would you vote to repeal that tax?
Yes, I would.
Okay, I need to get Mr. McDonald in here.
I would do it.
Mr. McDonald, and then Mr. Young.
Two basic things. Number one, the amount of interest that Georgia pays on its debt, which is about $2 billion is what the state has in general obligation debt. The interest runs about $140 million, $135 million a year. The money that we make off of managing the resources of Georgia, we collect over $105 to $110 million in interest in managing the money. So we have a net interest payment to the state somewhere of about $20, $25 million. Managing those dollars and then going back to how we utilize those dollars, the priorities as far as the spending was concerned, they were done in areas that we would have not been able to have those teacher salaries in 1989, 490, had we not made an investment in ourselves the first time In 17 years, the people of Georgia were asked. We would have also not been able to send back $97 million to local boards of education for the purpose of helping finance local schools at the local level.
I need to move to Mr. Young.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from you for a while.
Well, I think that's the difference between us, I say. They're talking about dividing up the taxpayers' money. And what I'm talking about is bringing in new money into the state of Georgia. And I think you saw that with Underground, you saw that with the Democratic Convention, you're going to see it with the Olympic Games, but we could also double Georgia's exports. We have marketed Georgia as a low-wage and a low-skill state. We can bring in high-tech jobs from all over the United States to Georgia. We can help through the Advanced Technology Development Center at Georgia Tech to create new businesses right here in Georgia. The governor in the 1990s and 21st century is going to have to help the economy grow, not just stay around the state capitol and play with the taxpayers' money, no matter how good you play with it.
I'm going to exercise my option as the moderator to introduce a new topic and to do one of the questions I love, which you may not like, and that's one of the give me a yes or no question as we go around the table, and then we'll discuss gun control. Should there be a statewide mandatory waiting period for the purchase of a weapon? Mr. McDonald? Mr. Maddox?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Barnes? No. Mr. Young?
There should be a telephone number that you call.
Yes or no?
No.
There should be instantaneous check whenever you go to buy a gun.
Yes or no?
Well, we were looking for a yes or no,
Well,
but
you can't.
Well, you can't
let's
answer a
discuss.
question.
Well, when you go in to buy anything on your American Express, a Visa card, they check your credit before they let you pay. You can do that with an 800 number to the GBI. And I think that system would work in Georgia, and I would hope we could put that into effect.
Virginia has used that, and it's working very well. On certain kinds of handguns and on certain kinds of semi-automatic weapons, they do an instantaneous check. That's the way to go about doing it. That's the reasonable way to go about doing it.
But I agree with that, both of those.
I'm having a little trouble with that after this evening, but no,
Well,
I
you
do
know,
agree.
I'm
Thank you very much.
He's trying to get
I'm
four
a
chili
member of
dogs.
the American Gun Society, you know, and I'm renewing my prescription for National Rifle Association. And I believe that the people ought to have protected the right to keep and bear arms. It's in our Constitution. And I don't want nobody breaking into my home or my business, me not being able to defend myself.
Well, gentlemen, I asked the last question. Who'd like to
I've
jump
got
in?
one.
Okay.
Everyone knows how I've dealt with Speaker Tom Murphy. I've stood up to him on the lottery. I've stood up to him on the sales tax exemption on groceries. I've stood up to him on open meetings. My question is for all the candidates, and it's this. Do you think that Tom Murphy represents the kind of leadership and vision Georgia needs as we move into the 1990s? I don't.
I think Tom Murphy represents the kind of wisdom and authority that I would appreciate as a governor. I was in the Congress when they changed from a strong speaker to a weak speaker. And one of the reasons the Congress hadn't functioned is it's chaos. I think I had no problem getting along with Speaker Murphy on Underground, on the Olympics, on the Democratic National Convention. Anything I went to him and got his advice on, I got good sound advice, and I would appreciate that kind of leadership in the General Assembly.
Zell, if by some quirk of fate that you became the Democratic nominee for governor of Georgia, would you want the support of House Speaker Tom Murphy? Yes or no?
You see the difference between Bubba, you, and Andy. You want to sit down with the speaker. I want to stand up to him. Andy wants to send him cigars. I want to send him a
Do
message.
you want his support?
You know, it surprised me a Zigzag Zell talking about he's standing up to anything. Huh? All his life, he wanted to ride a bicycle with me in the campaign, but much as he swings right, left, right, back in,
When
and
was
it
that,
jeopardized both of our lives.
When was that,
I'm
Governor?
surprised you want to stand up against anything. You never have stood anywhere long. You're kind of like the mayor over there.
You know, Churchill said the greatest exhilaration is to be shot at and missed, and that's just what you've done, Governor.
The one person who has not yet responded to this question
I
is
didn't miss.
Roy Barnes.
There ain't nothing you hadn't stood for someplace or another. You and that fellow over there, too.
I have differences with the speaker. I respect him. But I will say this, there. I know this, when you regained your power in the Senate, it was the speaker that you went to and asked for help, because he called me and asked me to vote to restore your power because you had gone to him and wanted his help and assistance in becoming the new powerful lieutenant governor of the Senate, because It was at that time that you told me and he told me that y'all had made up and that you were going to work together and he was going to help you get your power.
Mayor, when you
so you throw him away when you don't need it.
When you were mayor of the city of Atlanta and you had some real needs from the state capitol, who was one of the first people you'd go see?
I went right straight to Speaker Murphy.
Right.
And I think...
You knew where you stood when you left, didn't you?
That's right. And he would give you good advice, and if he didn't think it was realistic, he'd tell you so. So I think that Speaker Murphy has had... I think the media sees him as an authority figure that's more or less a dictator.
When the city of Atlanta school system, when the pension fund went down, and there was a bill before the General Assembly to bring the Atlanta system into the teacher retirement system, it lacked one vote, having the necessary amount of votes to put it over. And who cast that vote in the House of Representatives?
We are not talking about that, gentleman. I enjoy. No, wait a minute.
We're almost out of time.
I enjoy sitting down with the
Everybody
speaker and
has something
talking
to
with
say
him.
with me.
I'm talking about the direction that we're going to take this state in the 1990s. I'm not talking about whether he's a nice fella or not, and whether we can get along with him personally. I'm talking about the direction that we're going to take.
The Speaker really wants to educate Georgia's children, as I do too. The Speaker really wants to see the economy grow. He's tired of the two Georgias, and he doesn't like the idea that rural communities have not prospered as well as big cities.
It's almost
And I
starting
think
to
we can
sound
work
like the
together.
Speaker's running for
The
governor.
Speaker's not running for governor. That's what Zell Miller zigzag's trying to make out like.
Okay, gentlemen. What?
I hope
He couldn't change it if he got to be governor,
hope
regardless
folks
of the Speaker.
won't
That belongs to
judge-
the House of Representatives. Governor can't run the General Assembly.
Gentlemen, we're out
You'd
of
be
time.
violating the Constitution if you did.
Okay, gentlemen, if we're going to have summations, we're out of time. I want to thank you very much. This has been interesting. I think we have a much better perspective of who you are, how you interact, and what you stand for. Now, we are at the point in our program where each candidate gets an opportunity to sum up. Just prior to sitting down, we had representatives of the candidates pick numbers to determine the order of the summation. You have a minute. We start with Lester Maddox. 1
All
minute,
right,
sir.
so now, you know, I've been governor before. We had the most open, I think, efficient, honest administration. We broke records in education, higher education, that still stand. And I'm in a position as an outside leader, a chief executive, where the insiders can't because of passive, bland, get along by going along followership. I'm in a position as a chief executive coming from business, industry, and government. I can help to make Georgia's government turn around and start representing all the people, not the special interests. And we can have that open, honest, efficient government, more so than this state's ever had, and more than any other state in America. I want to make it cleaner and safer for all our people, and Lester Maddox can do it. And I can do more in 4 years than any one of these fellows can in 12.
Okay, the next person picked in order by the representatives of the campaigns, Zell Miller.
My opponents spend their time attacking me and tearing down Georgia. I'd rather spend my time building up Georgia. The Georgia that isn't afraid to try new solutions to old problems, like a state lottery for education and boot camps and auto insurance reform. You know, every election year, you have politicians going around telling you how bad this state is. And then they say the solution to it is elect me. Well, I'm not going to play that game. I've been to places in this state that these folks around this table have never even heard of. And I've talked to the people, and I've looked in their eyes, and I've listened to their stories. I've been in their homes, I've been in their stores, I've been in their offices and schools, I've been out in their fields, and I learned something from them. Despite some problems in this state, Georgia is still a great place to live. And if these people would say that every once in a while, they'd probably be where I am right now in this campaign.
Your minute is up. Andrew Young.
Georgia is a great place to live, and I live in Georgia by choice, and it's as good as any place anywhere in the world. But Georgia is lagging in education. We are seeing our natural resources and our children running out, going someplace else to look for jobs. I want to help Georgia grow and help Georgia's small cities to grow by helping educate our children and by bringing business to those small cities where they can protect and preserve that quality of life. You know, I've been very, very lucky. Everything, I don't know how, but everything I've ever done in Congress, at the UN, as mayor of the city, it always turned out better because I was on the job 365 days a year, and I knew that you had to do more than pass a bill to solve a problem. You had to get in and roll up your sleeves and give real leadership. And so we have underground, and we're going to have the Olympics, and we're going to have a greater Georgia, and I'm going to be the governor of Georgia.
And we move on now to Roy Barnes.
This election really comes down to choices. It's how we make choices and how we set our priorities. Are we going to allow our education to lag 42nd behind and depend on gambling losses to fund education? Or are we going to reduce class size and move forward in some new and innovative programs? This election also comes down to how we spend money. Tonight is a good example of that. Lieutenant Governor Miller refused to answer the question on whether he thought it was right that public officials, part-time public officials, raid the treasury of this state and receive huge pensions of $72,000 to $110,000 as he would if he's elected one term of governor. I want to change the way things happen in Georgia. I want to set new priorities to educate our children, to protect our environment, and to keep us safe on the streets of this state.
And once again, the order of the final summations here, drawn by representatives of the candidate, and the final person to sum things up, Lauren McDonald.
Ethics, this is not certainly a new issue. I've been talking about it all along. As a tax-paying citizen of Georgia, you're entitled to representation based on what's good for the citizens of Georgia, not what's good for a select few, especially big-moneyed interest. When an individual becomes a millionaire as a public servant, one's got to question the ethics. The whole story hasn't yet been told. When a candidate raises a lot of large sums of money, of which he cannot spend in a campaign, I wonder what's going to happen to those war chests when the campaigns are over. I challenge all of our candidates to pledge that they will return to the givers, or either give to charity those amounts of monies that are left over. I initiated the current ethics legislation, and I'm the only candidate that's abided by the spirit of the law in that. Mr. Miller and Mr. Young, and yes, even Mr. Barnes, have rushed out to collect huge sums of money, contributions in excess of $50,000 and $100,000. In return, these people
Mr. McDonald,
expect
we're out
more
of
than
time.
just
I've got to
that
stop
for
you because
government.
the other gentleman held to their time. I want to thank you all very much for being with us this evening. The campaign has a number of weeks left. We'll be talking with all of you in the weeks to come, and thank you again for sharing with us tonight. I want to tell you that tomorrow night, Brenda Wood will be here hosting the Republicans who want the governor's office, Campaign 90, the Republicans. That will be tomorrow night at 8 o'clock here on Channel 5. And now, once again, my thanks to the 5 Democratic candidates for governor of Georgia who have joined us in the studio tonight. And a reminder, the day to vote, July 17th, primary election day in Georgia. We'll see you at the polls. Thanks for being with us. Good night.